Nikolas. Thanks for joining us. Do you want to just start off and tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up and what your childhood was like?
Sure. So basically, I grew up in Ludwigsburg, which is near Stuttgart in Germany, the hometown of cars with Mercedes-Benz, Porsche coming from Stuttgart. I'm born in 1989 and I mainly grew up there.
And did you grow up around cars growing up? Like, were you into that kind of thing as a child?
My father was quite interested in cars. He was always a big fan of Audi cars. So one of his first cars was an Audi A80. Later on, it was an Audi A100. Yeah, I always enjoyed going on vacation with it and cruising around. It was sometimes pretty easy for me to fall asleep inside a car, more easy than actually laying in bed. So yeah, this is how I mainly started to get in contact. Having all those car brands, you frequently saw them on the streets. So for me, it was always something really special when you saw this new Porsche model driving down the road. It was hard to not somehow get in contact with cars. Yeah, I was interested, but not like reading car magazines and stuff like this. This came a little later. I still remember that it was the Audi R8 was like the first car which really grabbed my attention. Basically, I went to this car convention thing with my brother and I saw the Audi R8 there. It was brand new car. This made me pretty excited about it, and this was also like the time that I got my driver license. I started earlier for sure with filmmaking, but this is where I started to connect my passion to filmmaking with cars itself.
And then when you were younger, like, what kind of films were you watching? Was there anything that you kind of watched that kind of inspired you to become a filmmaker?
Yeah, for sure. I still remember there was this one certain film, Jurassic Park. I think we all seen it. It was the first movie which really blew me away. I think I was 11 years old. I wasn't really allowed to watch this film. I was doing a trick with changing the VHS tape into another case. And I went to a friend of mine. My mother always knew that I might sneak out trying to watch a different film, so I put the VHS tape in a different case. When I left the house, she was like, okay, what is the movie you're going to watch? And I just showed her the cover and she was fine with it, but she didn't check the inside. I went to a friend and we watched Jurassic Park. I was crazy afraid, but also pretty excited about it. Yeah, this is somehow how the affection started, and that I really realized, like, okay, there is this different layer behind it, especially with the CGI at that time. I wasn't used to something like this before. Researching and checking how they did this specifically. Another thing which also really affected me on thinking about camera work, certain angles and stuff like this was also video games. I love playing video games at a very early age. I can still remember one game that really was something special to me was Metal Gear Solid.
Nice. And then what was the first kind of experience with actual filmmaking? Like, when did you first pick up a camera and start like filming little projects here and there?
So my father was becoming a doctor and he always had some film cameras to basically go to presentations and stuff to film them. Sometimes when he wasn't using it, I took the camera. It was a mini DV camera. First project that I remember was at the age of 8, where I was filming my pet rabbits and did this little documentary on how they were growing up. It was the first thing which came closer to having somehow a storyline. I was staging certain things. I was printing some titles on paper pages, like filming them with the camcorder, because I actually didn't know how to really do it in a editing software or something. I didn't use this at all in the beginning, so it was like filming those titles from a paper sheet, like rewinding, recording again, and editing like on the camera itself. Was more interested in action movies at this time, so I bought me some cheap airsoft guns. In the beginning, I was quite alone, I would say, with my hobby and doing all this. There were some films where I tried to be the good cop and maybe a robber, something like this. And so playing both sides and having a plot in there. I challenged myself on giving the weapon some muzzle flashes, so it was basically like always challenging myself on how I could make those things more realistic and more interesting for actually myself, because there was no audience really. But this is how I started also trying to do some editing with Windows Movie Maker, doing some transitions, and it started step by step and was getting more and more complex.
Do you remember the action movies that you were watching back then? Did you have to smuggle them past your mum again, like do the VHS trick?
Action movies that I like to watch were for sure Die Hard with Bruce Willis. Another one I really liked was The Punisher with Tom Jane, I think is his name. I watched this many times. When you're a teenager, sometimes those strong characters, they were doing something. Once the results were getting better, I was actually not too afraid anymore to just keep them for me. I was showing them to some friends and they were actually interested to participate in them. Like the cool guys started to actually talk to me and try to be part of it as well. So this was a great way to connect to people.
And so how did you kind of go from like making these little projects? Did you go to film school after this, or did you go directly into working for film, or did you go another direction first? Like how did you kind of build up into making it a profession?
After high school, I had this half year off, but then straight away went to film school for 3.5 years. Basically, the good thing about my film school was that you didn't have to decide from the very beginning what you want to focus on, in which direction you want to go. So a great thing was that I was able to get an inside look into all the departments and not like only focusing on directing. I think I basically did everything on a set once. Being part of the lighting crew, even being a driver for just like picking up the actors from the airport and stuff like this. So it was great for me to get this insight, and even nowadays, it helps me to understand how the department work, what the people or the crew members actually think about, or what is important for them, basically. In the beginning, it was actually hard for me to decide on what I want to do in the film industry, because as I was growing up doing basically everything with editing, doing the camera work, working on the sound design and stuff, it was hard to just say like, okay, I want to specifically concentrate on this. But still, in the end, directing was where I could combine most of the things I'm interested in. For sure, having a big impact on a project itself.
Yeah, and then in film school, what kind of projects were you working on? Were you like shooting little short films, and then how did you go from like film school then into directing commercials, or was there like, what was the kind of steps involved to getting to where you are now?
During the film school, I also had classes, for example, where we were working with Photoshop. We did some photography. This also helped me, like, for example, only concentrating on this one image. not like going out there shooting all the time, just like focus, let's say like this one product, you want to use the right lights and the reflection needs to be perfect. So like this approach also helped. Coming back to cars, the first projects that I did were tuning videos for smaller brands that weren't too big. Once again, I just grabbed a camera, a camcorder, which for sure was a little bit more up to date at this time, and continuous shooting. This was basically like the first contact with actually shooting cars. It was great earning a little bit of side money to invest in new equipment, because at this time, actually, it was not that easy to access all this equipment than nowadays, with all those great brands like Tilter, which have all kind of camera rigs for every camera. And especially in Germany, it wasn't easy to access these things too much. So I was like ordering this shitty rig from India on eBay and putting my Panasonic GH camera on there, and shooting, trying more stuff like mounting cameras. I think this was also the time where there were the first GoPro cameras, so like mounting action cameras to a car and stuff like this was pretty exciting at this time.
You made those projects at film school, and you already had like an interest in creating car content. What kind of other car content were you watching, like from films, like chase scenes or like TV shows or anything to kind of like get inspiration and on how to film cars? What were you like looking at?
I think one thing was Top Gear and other car shows. Then for sure movies like Fast and Furious. I think it was also already the era of the first Ken Block films, which made me pretty excited about tuning out cars and showing how they perform. I was studying these scenes over and over again to somehow get a feeling on how to edit scenes like this and to use the right camera angles to make it dynamic and just interesting.
Like, how did you build up your career over time to eventually getting like your first commercial?
So during film school, we always had like every week there were some photographers, directors of companies coming to the campus, gave their presentations. There was this one company which showed us their show reel, and they were talking about the car projects. They did quite some cool stuff for Aston Martin and Mercedes at this time. They were pretty known for car photography. They catched me with this presentation, and after they finished, I straight away went to the front and asked them for their contact, tried to actually get an internship. Once I finished film school with my final project, which was actually nothing related to cars and no commercial, it was a short film. I wanted to try also how the more staged world is working for me, or having this different approach. So I decided in the end to do something completely different. But once I finished this and left the film school, I started this internship at this company called Staud Studios. They are now part of Media Monks. For half a year, I did an internship. After that, I got a contract there. In the beginning, it was only like 15 people working at this company. And in the beginning, it was mainly like, as I said, they did those huge photo campaigns. We said, basically, when you already have the car on location somewhere, why not shoot some film there as well? So in the beginning, it was behind the scenes stuff of those shootings. Then we did some little teasers with the car. For example, I still remember that we shot something for the AMG GT, the first one, way before it was released. The clients started to like this approach, like combining photography with film. The projects were getting bigger and bigger. The company was growing. We were working for all kind of clients, from Maserati to Porsche, to Infinity and so on. But we managed then to get the creative lead of Mercedes-AMG. And this is when everything was going crazy there because the growth was so quick with having all those new employees, getting the bigger projects. So it was great for me for sure, having also the opportunity with in the beginning only doing those smaller projects, doing some editing and so on, suddenly working on those A campaigns for a new car from AMG.
Take us back to like first meeting the production company. Like, did they have a internship like ready to go, or did you have to ask them about an internship, and was it like a paid thing? And then how did you kind of convince them to pick you? Did you show them your YouTube videos with like a bunch of views? Like, did you have a show reel together? Like,
they weren't like actually searching for an intern, so I was quite pushy and tried everything to somehow get the chance to work there. Still during film school, I started the first show reel of my work, for sure showing them the videos that I did, so I could somehow convince them to actually get to know me better, even though it wasn't planned. And they said like, okay, we give it a try. And the money was not really good. It wasn't possible to live from it, but it was a start. It wasn't sure like after 6 months if they would keep me, or they would say like, okay, sorry, but we don't have the possibility to have you in the team, but they actually did. And from there, everything started.
So sweet. So how did you progress from just an intern to them becoming like a full-time employee, or did you like ask them if you can direct a certain project, or were you filming these different things because they were focused on video and photo and you kind of trying to push more towards the video side?
For sure, I was always pushing like to make the projects more interesting, bigger, tell a little story, and so on and so on. So I was starting to write treatments that we were able to actually show the client and presenting it to them and trying to achieve those things while we were shooting the photos and stuff. As I said, like they started to dig it and to like what we were doing there. My bosses, they also started to trust me on that. And it started with having the car or one car just for ourselves, like a whole shooting day, and getting some proper equipment, shooting together with my colleagues. We were pushing it a lot. For sure this happened before we were having the lead for AMG itself, because there already the projects were kind of bigger. At the very beginning, they didn't allow me to direct those big campaigns, but sometimes it was doing part of the pre-production. They started pretty early with visualizing things with computers in a 3D software. So I did some shot lists and angles and whatever for certain film shootings, for other directors even sometimes. Also it was editing, for example. I still remember that we, together with a colleague, we were working on a campaign for the new C63. We were actually using Linkin as a mood track because I was a big Linkin fan, same with my colleague. In the end, they decided actually go with it, and it was great like having this impact on those projects. Later on, this even led to starting this cooperation with Linkin. A few months later, I was suddenly in LA shooting for the 50 years of AMG campaign. So it was different steps. It was not this one thing, whereas I would say like, okay, after this step, this happened and I started to direct this one commercial. It was like different steps from different things I was doing, like the editing, the treatment writing, directing, small things, maybe being a B unit director. And all this together led to them trusting me on actually being allowed to direct a piece.
Yeah, so you're working in a production company, you're able to like see how everything worked. You're kind of starting to write treatments and getting small jobs here and there. How did you learn about the whole like treatment process? Were your bosses and your colleagues kind of helping you and kind of showing you what's involved and what's needed? Or did you find other inspiration, like searching on the internet or trying to, because it's hard to find like treatments from other directors sometimes? Like, were there some through the production company you're kind of like finding and saying, oh, this is what you have to do?
For sure, I had some colleagues that were helping me out with certain things. Also art directors and creative directors that were working for the company itself. But not really that I had a mentor who was teaching me on how to write a treatment. It was in the beginning, to be honest, they were nothing compared to what a treatment, especially nowadays, looks like, with having incredible mood pictures and a great layout, nice font in there and stuff like this. It was basically a page. For sure, also due to the film school, I learned on how to write things in a filmic way and express them for other people to easily understand, and writing it easy to imagine. But it was more like trial and error on, okay, why not actually storyboard something myself? For example, there was this Porsche project where I did quite some storyboards for the whole film. So yeah, it was quite natural to trying to sell an idea that I had by doing those certain steps, but I didn't have like this perfect example on how to write a perfect treatment.
What was your first like commercial that you actually directed? Like, as you said, you were doing little bits and pieces here. Do you remember the first time that they kind of gave you the title and you showed up on set and were able to actually direct?
It started with stuff that wasn't really released. It was also internal projects where I could actually call myself director. When people were asking, I was quite shy to actually mention that I'm a director, because for sure you go to the movies in the end or in the beginning with the credits, you see like directed by Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan. I was quite shy to use this title. I think one of the first projects where I called myself director was, for example, this E63S campaign that I was shooting in LA. My biggest dream was always actually shooting in LA and to shoot in Hollywood. It took quite some time because there were many projects planned to be shot in the States, but for a German car company to say like, okay, we fly to the States and shoot something there, for sure it needs to be a bigger budget. You need to ship the cars there and stuff like this. So in the end, it took quite some time that we actually went to shoot a commercial there. I can still remember that I was in my hotel room the day before the shooting. I could barely sleep because I was crazy excited for sure, and I would say also a little bit afraid of it. After not having too much sleep, I went to the set the next day. For me, it was nothing comparable. In the States, everything is way bigger. There is like double the vans, or you have your own trailer with your own restroom and stuff like this. So I was walking in the middle of LA downtown. I was walking to set. I saw they had those signs up there where they said, if you park here, your car is getting towed, and like for blocks, basically like whole downtown. We were shooting in this pretty famous location, the Lower Grand. It was just mind-blowing for me to be there finally. So after getting to know the crew real quick, there was the safety briefing with my assistant director, Casey Grimm, great guy. So he finished the safety briefing, he turned over to me and he said, hey, this is Nick. And then I knew like, okay, shit, should I say something? Then I had this one moment that I thought like, okay, there is some people at my work that call me Nick Hollywood, a name that I don't earn at all. I never been to Hollywood or LA at all, not even as a tourist, but I was always dreaming about it. And today's the day, and I know that only with the help of everyone involved, it's going to be great. From there, only hours later, like the whole crew started to actually call me Nick Hollywood. And for the next shooting day, my assistant director changed my name on the call sheet to Nick Hollywood, and this is how how it started, that some people still to this day call me like this. And I can still remember setting up Instagram, and I asked one of the crew members, so what should be my name? And they said like, yeah, for sure, it's Nick Hollywood. So this is how I got this name, which still sticks with me somehow. Since then, I shot 6 or 7 times in LA, and it's still something really special for me every time. Yeah, but this was this one shooting where I really realized like, okay, this is something else, and doing it professionally.
Do you want to just talk a little bit about how you made the Mercedes-AMG E63 project? Like that was your first commercial in Hollywood, and you were taking on the name Nick Hollywood. How did the first shot go?
Like sitting in the arm itself, and I think till this date I never did something like this dynamic with drifting involved, blocking all those roads inside the city. And I can still remember there was this one scene where the idea was that the car is leaving the lower Grand, drifting to a main road. Every time we were shooting it was like 15 police motorcycles going out there, blocking, I think, even the highway. They had to clean the frame and everything. They sent the smoking van in there to have the nice atmosphere. It was about that the car is like drifting out there, as the precision driver for sure also didn't want to risk too much because there was only this one car overall. We knew that it had to be on a convention a few days later. There was no other set of tires for it. We had to be pretty careful, so for sure he wasn't like totally sending it on the first take. So we had to do it again and again, and it took like, every time it took like 15 minutes to release traffic again, block the traffic and so on. And this was also that I really realized every minute was costing thousands of dollars to be persistent and say like, okay, we need to do another take, because I heard people on the radio saying like, do we have the take? Can we move on? And stuff like this. And actually sitting there and saying like, no, I don't think we have it yet. Let's do another one. Was like this barrier in the beginning, which I quickly started to put in the back of my head, basically. But yeah, there was this moment where I thought like, okay, shit, like let's hope that we nail this on the next 1 or 2 takes. Otherwise, we are going to lose other shots. We are going to lose the light in there, because there was only a very short window having like the perfect light in there. And I knew that we have this one establisher shot of the car, and the idea was to have this kind of stage with the perfect light from above, and the car was creeping in there. So it was not too easy to learn on how to approach these things right. Deciding, okay, we have the take, let's move on, let's do this one. For sure, you're planning everything beforehand. You have the recce, but still you always need to adapt. Then it came down to saying like, okay, let's shoot this first, because I think that the light will move. Otherwise, we are not going to have the light perfectly and stuff like this, especially with available light. And we weren't able to cheat something on there. It had to be just in time. So yeah, this was quite an interesting experience, but it helped me a lot on how I was approaching projects years after.
So yeah, I see the cinematographer was Otar Gudnason. So he's like a very experienced DP. Was he like a good help to you? Like, were you asking questions, and like were you doing like a pre-production, like throughout pre-production, like kind of leaning on him for his advice and his experience?
Yeah, totally. For sure, with someone like Otar being this busy, it wasn't like too easy to do weeks of preparation or something like this. So I had to think about most of the things myself beforehand. But for sure, it was great with the recce and having days before the shooting, talking through everything with him. And his experience helped me a lot, for sure. And also having this really experienced arm car crew, for example. which shot like the big feature films and doing it for, I don't know, 20 years or something. It was not my first time sitting in an arm car there, but in a scale like this it was. So, and as I said, like speaking completely English, using all the English terms, but yeah, they were a great help for sure. They had quite some input and also helped me with some ideas. I was really happy that I didn't have to do a shooting like this with a crew that wasn't too experienced.
So yeah, after the Mercedes-AMG commercial, what was next?
There were different projects that I did afterwards. There was also the AMG GT4 race car that we shot. It was quite interesting because the car was not completely finished. For sure, it's nothing special when you shoot cars and they still have like a concept or prototype status to it, that not everything works flawless. And in this case, it was interesting because we had to be quick with the car because like it still had a little bit of cooling problems. So we couldn't do too many stops. So the car had to be like constantly running. So it was hard to somehow set up a shot to say like, okay, let's, this is your first position. That's the second position. Let's just turn around and do it again, because the car had to be constantly driving. It was a beast, and it was quite some fun. Because for sure on a racetrack, it's always special because you have different speeds. Everything needs to be properly planned because there are so many things that can go wrong and people die there.
Because it was on a racetrack, it was like a whole new experience, like in terms of making things safe and trying to get things at speed and working through that whole environment.
For sure, speed-wise, it's a different thing, but it has pros because you can control it a bit better. Even though we had some shootings where they in between the car had to be covered because they were afraid that there might be a helicopter doing some taking some photos of a car not being released yet, doing spy pictures basically. I think the bonus of it is that it's quite controllable. You can go both directions most of the time actually, so you're not losing this much time. When you shoot in the city, sometimes you're just not allowed to actually like reverse or turn quickly around, and you need to do a big loop to do another take. This is definitely a good thing about shooting on a racetrack, but also for sure it's limiting creativity a little bit.
You did the Mercedes-AMG E63 first time in Hollywood. That went well, I guess, once it was all edited and the client was happy and your production company was happy with you. Were you able to then branch off from them and start freelance directing?
It was actually never the plan to work for a company for this amount of time. When I started, I said like, okay, maximum 4 years, and I want to try to work as a freelance director. But as it gave me so many great possibilities, traveling the world, shooting with race drivers like Lewis Hamilton and, as I mentioned before, Linkin Park and so on, working with big companies like the Mill Company 3. It took me like 5.5 years to actually decide to leave this safe world somehow. At this stage, it was, for me, it was quite safe because my bosses were quite happy with my work, but they were like planning a little bit to get me into a different direction, being more and more in charge of the campaigns, supervising projects, because they always said like it's easier for them to find a director for a job than having someone knowing the client like I do, and overseeing a project for this long period of time. But my plan was to do more jobs focusing on directing and also working for different brands. Then I decided to quit my job there, basically changed everything, moved to Berlin, started out as a freelance director. And I was quite lucky because I found my first agent, No Agency. They are actually called No Agency. It was great for me because they are a pretty big name in Europe and they have great talents on their roster. So I was quite lucky straight away having them on my side. Still remember like the last day working for the company, just a week later, I had my first project. I won my first pitch. It was something different for me, like actually pitching for projects, because in the company, for sure, they could push me onto projects, and it was easy to sell myself to the client and so on. So the pitching process was nothing that I was used to too much. I had this first pitch for Alfa Romeo. In the end, I heard like it was 15 directors pitching for it, which is quite a lot. And I won the job. So for sure it was a great start for me, and it helped to push me somehow and saying like, okay, maybe it was the right decision to leave this chapter behind and start something new. From there it picked up pretty good. Only a few weeks later I had my first project in China.
The Alfa Romeo project. So what did you have like that impressed them, like in terms of your like show reel or maybe your treatment that you submitted, because you're competing against 15 other directors that I'm sure had a lot of experience, where you only had like one commercial that you directed. Did you have other projects that you had worked on that you kind of built up a show reel, and how, like, why did you win that job, do you think?
At this time, like when I left the company, it was not only this one project that I was directing. I had quite some projects that I could actually show them being a director or being a second unit director and stuff. But I think what led to winning the pitch was maybe I took a different approach, because I got the briefing from the agency and I completely changed it basically. I was rewriting a lot, and maybe the other directors being more used to it, maybe they were a little bit afraid of going into a different direction. This might have been a reason that I won the pitch. But yeah, I never got the feedback why in the end they decided for me, but this might have been a reason.
Do you use like little Hot Wheels toys or anything to kind of communicate what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I do. I built one myself years ago to be able to show how the arm movement is, the camera movement, maybe even. This is definitely something that I'm using. I'm using an iPad mini where I use, for example, satellite data to have a top shot, and I can draw like the movement in there, or just taking pictures, and for sure the storyboardings, which I love to do. I put a lot of effort in there. I hope this is still a process that will be part of the filmmaking quite some time, especially with AI and stuff. I have, for example, one great artist doing my storyboards. The thing that I do is a cadrage of it and do really rough scribbles to show him how the proportions should be and maybe the angle and so on. But yeah, this is for sure also a big process. Working for this agency production, it helped me a lot to understand how agency works, how decisions are made by clients, and knowing what is going on their side, because sometimes it's not too easy to understand the politics, knowing what's leading to certain decisions. But what I learned is that the storyboards, they use them and really stick to them, because this is what is getting signed off by their bosses. For example, when you have the client on set, the agency and so on, it's not too often that you can do something completely different. This is the reason that I try to think as much about it as possible beforehand, even though it's sometimes hard because you need to do them at a very early stage without knowing locations. But still, it reminds me of drawing myself, and it's this additional creative playbook that you have on set, which helps everybody involved.
So do you work on the storyboards before you get the job, or do you wait until like it's been approved and you're the director and then you start drawing them, or do you do it to kind of help win the job?
Usually I don't do it like a detailed storyboard of it. It's more like illustrations to give a feeling, an idea, pre-visualize it somehow, coming back to that, I think sometimes it can also stand in your way if you did the storyboarding at this very early stage, like really detailed, showing them exactly a certain direction. Sometimes the understanding the brand itself, it's for me during the process there's so much research, there is so much listening to the clients, understanding what they want, understanding what the product is about. So for sure it can, especially if you show them incredible stills or storyboard pictures, can definitely help to win a pitch. But usually I try to do it more with the text I'm writing and the words I'm using to give them the right idea and the right direction, but without being this crazy specific that still everybody kind of has an own image. Because I think it also helps sometimes not like losing them maybe because you push it too much into a certain direction.
I don't know if you want to talk about this, but like in terms of like money, like is it, if you're winning jobs, like I'm sure it's a good life, but like if you have like a normal job and you compared to the job that you had versus and then getting like a commercial, like what was the kind of comparison in terms of like earning? Were you getting paid more at a full-time job, or then when you got like a first commercial where you're like, oh wow, this is like a bigger paycheck than what you're used to?
This definitely was a big difference, like getting my first paycheck compared to what I was earning in the company, especially because there were times where I was writing a treatment they sold for quite some money, or an idea, maybe even sometimes I was doing stuff for photo shootings or so on and so on. For sure, this is part of when you're like an employee, you need to get used to it. It's like everybody is doing it, but for sure, even though directing big commercials, it didn't change anything about what I was earning at the end of the month. It was sometimes easier to just say like, okay, I'm going to get paid at the end of the month and I don't need to get the next job. And it was maybe a little bit more relaxing to know, okay, like I don't really have to think about what is in 3 months or 4 months. Yeah, because the money was coming in, but it was straight away also pretty big projects that the difference was pretty big. I was quite surprised because I wasn't used to and didn't like really know how much you're going to earn in the end, because back in the day you couldn't just go on Google and see like, okay, what is a car commercial director earning? What is the like your daily fee and stuff like this? So yeah, it was quite different.
So did your agency or no agency, did they help kind of negotiate the rates and things?
Yeah, totally. They do all the contracts. Sometimes they get the request, they get a certain number for the daily fee. But what is great is they care about all this, and I don't have to directly talk to the production about it. For sure, talking about money is never like the greatest thing. And also thinking back of the days I started, like it was like hard to sometimes fight for $500 for a shooting day. So I think it's great to have someone who's in charge of that part, because then you can just talk about the creative things and stuff like this, and don't need to fight about money, about the payments and stuff like this. So I'm pretty happy that I have someone on my side. For me, like getting out there, for sure I had clients that I knew, I had certain people that I knew, but having this agent from the very beginning, it was great that I had the possibility to get those crazy boards sent. Being out there myself, you would never get in contact with those clients and those big projects. So yeah, it helped me a lot especially in the beginning.
Awesome. And then after the Alfa Romeo project, what was kind of next?
After the Alfa Romeo project, there came this commercial for this oil brand. It's maybe not the sexiest product, but I love this project because the client and the agency, they were really trusting me with everything. It was a pretty big project, and shooting in China for the first time was also like a completely different experience for sure. Like all the inside shots where we had, for example, a shower scene or this children's room, this was all in studio. So we had like 3 huge studios and they were building all those sets in there. I was so surprised on how crazy fast they were with building those sets. Like you went to the studio and you were talking about everything with the production designer. You came back there the next day and it was already built. We also built a future lab where they were working with the liquids. I'm pretty sure like the whole process building all these sets would have taken like 2 or 3 weeks when you would build something like this in Europe. Yeah, this was really crazy to see. And also nice, like coming back from the company, seeing like people actually fly me to all those places. They pay a good fee being there and being appreciated, and they trusting you with your ideas and your visions, and you go there and you scribble it together with the production designer, and then you see those crazy sets. And they were even building like a gas station, because the company itself, they didn't have a gas station when the shooting happened. We were even like designing it together with the brand itself, how one of their gas stations could look like. And then they built the thing. They had like 2 crazy huge cranes, and they put a roof on there. And again, it was like quite an experience on making those decisions, because I still remember that with the gas station, the production asked me, okay, do we need a roof? Will we have some certain angles where we actually see the roof of it, or will it just be like closer shots so we can maybe save those extra $50,000 or something building a roof? And then you really had to think about even though we scribbled it like this, can we still like change a certain angle to avoid things? In the end, we ended up building it for one shot. But yeah, this was also quite exciting, and it was a great project because it was more storytelling involved to the stage, especially with AMG. They focused a lot on their cars, being on racetracks and so on. It was great for me to finally have more people in there and stage everything a bit more. And we were shooting at the Shanghai Formula 1 racetrack. There were like 200 extras showing up, and like again, it was great having all those people involved. And this also, even though it was not the biggest project till date, it was a different approach on how everything worked, having different crews again. It wasn't too easy, for example, shooting with the ARM crew, because they didn't speak any English. So actually my assistant director had to translate. So there was always quite a delay. You were doing a move and it took like 15 seconds that it actually happened. So especially with this, it was a Formula 2 car, being quick, and the crew wasn't like really used to doing those pretty dynamic action-like shots. It was quite hard to push them there. But once again, I had a great DP on my side, Jan Döppert, also really experienced, where it was really great to have him on my side. If you go to this country for the first time, like everybody is mainly speaking Chinese. It's great if you have the DP by your side you worked with before, to get the results you're looking for.
Sometimes if you use the same people all the time, your work will look the same. Same thing with like the equipment. If you only use like the same camera and the same lenses, then it's hard to kind of get out of that certain look. You know, you always want to be experimenting and trying new things and trying to like push the limits, I guess, of what's possible.
Right. And what I also experienced, for sure, what helps a lot is, for example, with the E63S project, when I was working with Otar and people that are doing this job for so many years, is like always try to get in contact with people that are even more experienced, and you should always try to aim for maybe getting in contact with someone, for example, you're in the beginning even scared to talk to or something like this. Always reach for the stars, because my experience was that whenever I tried to getting in contact with someone, that they were replying, they were happy to give away some knowledge or exchange about certain equipment or whatever. So I never had like a really bad experience of someone just saying like, this guy from Germany, I don't want to get to know him, or what is he talking about?
After that one in China, what was next?
After that project, one great project was a BMW commercial that I did, which was something pretty new for two brands, because BMW motorcycle and BMW M, they never did a commercial together. It was a first collaboration. I never shot motorcycles before. It was great to have this production company trusting me on this one. They are German, called Florida Reklame, and it was quite a different approach. It was a lot of research, learning about not only BMW motorcycles themselves, but also like motorcycles overall. But like the overall thing was pretty fun to shoot, because we had this BMW M2 until day strongest production motorcycle ever. For sure it was completely different to shoot it, because it was so freaking quick and it was hard to keep up with it. Holding it in frame was not too easy. The DP, it was the same thing for him. It was his first motorcycle shooting. It was quite different, but we had a really, really great precision rider for the motorcycle. He taught us a lot, talking about everything, about every single scene, and again, with all the pre-production going on, it made it way easier for us to actually shoot it. We went to Estonia, to Tallinn, beautiful city, beautiful country, which was pretty cool because I love Christopher Nolan and his movies. Like one of the end scenes where we even had a helicopter landing, and both the motorcycle and the car pulling in was shot at the location where Tenet actually started, and we were shooting at the harbor with all the ships. They had their crew members on there, and we had to avoid them taking pictures. There was quite a big crew involved. It was crazy dark, so we had to do a lot of lighting, but it was also one of the moments where I was like standing on this helipad, this helicopter hovering above it, the motorcycle and the car pulling in, and the sun was rising, so it was like this really epic scene, and this was one of the moments where I thought, okay, it was all worth it in the end, trying to get into car commercials and working on that. I'm always, for example, traveling with my Blackmagic, or now I have a Sony FX3 that I bring on set, which helped us to do some quick shots with the actors while we were prepping a different scene or something like this.
What Blackmagic camera was it?
It was the 6K Pro. Before that, I was using the Blackmagic Pocket 4K and having a PL to MFT on there that we were able to use the lenses. I think on this one we used P&S lenses. It was great to just put them on there and quickly shoot some things. Having a small camera next to the main cameras, which in this case was the Sony Venice. I'm a big fan of that one, especially because we were also shooting mainly at night. It helped us a lot with dual ISO. Also with the Rialto system, which is pretty compact, it's great to mount the camera. And next to those cameras, I often use smaller cameras. And in the end, I would say like most of the time it perfectly blends in. I think it's always great to have some small cameras on standby to get this one additional shot.
Yeah, and there's probably like less permission involved with like trying to organize everything with like 50 people. You can just grab the camera, get the shot, and then move on. And you don't need to tell everyone. Sometimes you might just want it maybe quicker just to grab it and get to the next place.
It's a little harder with drones, but I also love to have a drone on set. I have all the licenses. I'm flying drones since more than 10 years. Sometimes this also gave me this one additional shot to quickly send it up there. For sure doesn't work if you're like in a crowded city and the production won't let you get it up there. But maybe even sometimes for recce's, if it's just an establisher shot or something of the setting, some treetops or whatever, it's great to just send them up there or do the recce with it. And nowadays, this gear is so great that having, for example, the Mavic 3 Cine or something like this, it's good enough to sometimes end up in the main commercial.
Yeah, for sure. And then what were you working on after those projects? There's probably a bunch of them. And then the latest one you did for Hyundai, what was that like?
Yeah, this was a pretty great project. I loved this one. What was pretty cool is this was actually no pitch. They just went with me. They wanted to work with me from the very first moment. We had quite some time actually to do some pre-production for it. We were shooting it in Prague with a service production. They are called Sync. They are also my Czech representation. The agency in Notion and the production company, they came from Korea. So I was mainly in contact with the Hyundai N headquarters. This was great because things were possible way quicker. Sometimes you work on projects and you don't have access to like the high hierarchies, but there everything was pretty quick and they were helping out a lot. So we had those two cars, we had a lot of sets of tires, which is, as I mentioned before, nothing you can always plan with, even though with dynamic car shooting it should always be part of it. But here we didn't have to worry about anything. We were shooting in the middle of Prague in the old town, which was great at night, but it was also not too easy because we only had this 2.5 hour time slot shooting in the city because the car was really confidential for the brand itself. It's quite a game changer because it's an electric car, fully electric, but you can actually drive it like a combustion engine car with gear changes. You have a rev counter. It revs up to I think 8,000 RPM. It generates some sound, so it really feels like a race car put into this modern electrical world. So it was a quite exciting, interesting car. We had a phantom camera, which was quite cool to shoot additional stuff. We had a really good FPV crew where we were able to shoot some exciting stuff. Once again, the client, they were respecting us a lot and what we were doing, and for sure they had their checkbook on product feature that they were looking for because it was a worldwide launch as well. They had quite some things they wanted to show, but in between it was always that we had the chance to shoot just some cool and epic stuff. There were moments where they said like, okay, because of legal problems we cannot show the car drifting out of the pit box into the pit lane, but they still let me shoot it just in case, or for the director's cut. Yeah, it was a really great experience and was one of the really fun projects as well.
So you mentioned driving it. Do you, like, I see in the background, do you have other like steering wheels and helmets and stuff? What is the story behind all that?
So I started to use steering wheels for sim racing. Started with the PlayStation 2, even though it was not the sim-like as it is nowadays. Now I have a Fanatec setup and most of the steering wheels are from Fanatec. I just love to go on the virtual racetrack, spin some rounds there. It's pretty close to the real thing. Yeah, it's great fun.
What are your plans for the future? Like, what do you want to achieve? Where do you want to go with this filmmaking?
I think it's pretty exciting times. For sure, it's somehow frightening on how quick AI is developing, but I think it also gives a lot of great possibilities for future filmmakers. Especially like when I think back of me doing films, like it wasn't too easy with having access to the right gear and so on. And I can imagine that it doesn't take too long that people at home in their underwear can do their own feature films. Maybe even download like the Brad Pitt DLC downloadable content package, where you have like different ages of a certain actor, and basically you're able, in combination of virtual reality, to do the camera work, to maybe even do the dialogues and the acting, have always like the perfect conditions. If you want to have rain, you can have rain. If you want to have it sunny, you can have it sunny. Yeah, I think this gives a lot of potential, and already nowadays with Unreal Engine and so on, there are shots you could never achieve in reality. So I'm pretty much looking forward to this, also digging into that topic more, and not being afraid of not having enough to work in the future because of those developments. But I think if you stay curious and you go with it and you try things, there will be always a way. For sure, with car commercials, I guess it's easier to replace it to a certain amount if there is no actors involved and stuff. But yeah, maybe some completely different things will be possible. So I'm really looking forward to using more of this technology. I think like I love the cars and the car commercial world, but maybe also trying different things, like going more into documentary direction, doing something like a series for a streamer, maybe even go more into the feature film direction. For sure, you're always writing things, you have certain ideas, so maybe there's this one day I'm working on a feature film, I don't know.
Hopefully, not in the Matrix with all the AI stuff. We're all in a simulator. Thanks so much for talking with us, Nikolas. It's been super informative, and it's great to hear your story. But as a last thought, like a final thought, what kind of advice do you have for somebody who's kind of interested and wants to direct like car commercials specifically?
Always being curious, always trying things, and not to be afraid of doing mistakes. And there were certain moments where people were laughing about what I was doing, and they said like, it's shitty, you just have an old camcorder, the quality sucks. And they compared it for sure to other projects that had a different budget, that had a different size of a crew, and you should mainly do it for yourself, I think, in the beginning. And not like starting it because you think like, okay, my aim is to have 1 million views or earn money with it. Yeah, I think it's not going to work out if you just do it because of those goals. And I know many filmmakers that went into the advertising world because they thought like it's a great way just to earn some money. But I think to be successful, you need to actually love to do it. I think this comes down to everything. Even though you see those thousands of videos of the latest cameras and drones and so on, and you often have the feeling, oh, okay, there's this new gimbal, I need this for being able to do this shot. You should be creative to find ways to get a certain shot or something with what you have, the toolbox you have.
Well, thanks so much. I think we covered everything. Is there anything else that you were thinking? Do you want to talk about? Or?
I mainly want to thank you for getting in contact with me, and I think it's a really great thing that you're doing, and I would have been really happy back in the day if there would have been something like what you are doing to give an insight to automotive related content and so on. So yeah, thank you.